Begin. So, bit of housekeeping to start with. Does everybody know how to raise their little yellow hand? If you want to ask a question or comment, if you go down to the bottom, um, what's it say? I can't see it today. There should be a smiley face of some sort. Somebody tell me what you do. It's usually there is a smiley face. And today
Says
it's
reactions. Reaction.
reactions. That's the one. I always forget. Thank you. It's reactions. If you press on reactions, which is the little heart, then you press raise hand. That's it. And then you press lower hand to take it down again. Um, so we're at the moment we're on one. No, we're not on one screen. We're on two screens. So if you may, even though you can see me, I may not be able to see you. So do put up your yellow hand if you want to comment. Okay, keeping yourself safe. We will be doing a certain amount of walking around, moving. So just make sure there's no cables and pets and other things you can trip over. It's up to you to keep yourself safe. Just to say that, obviously. And if you can keep your camera on, that is always wonderful. I know it's not always possible, but if you can, that's always appreciated. Um, so let's just say hello to Brenda. Brenda, can you unmute and can you say hello for a moment? Hi, Brenda. And Brenda very
Morning,
kindly has
everybody.
done all the organizing for us. So thank you so much, Brenda.
Good morning.
Ah,
I'm
good.
so happy to see all of you. And yes, I've been talking to most of you, but some of you are new. You're welcome, and looking forward to having a lovely session with Penelope this morning.
Thank you, Brenda. So now, just to say, who has my book? How many people have the book? Yes, lovely. Absolutely. And for those who don't, I will send a link afterwards in case you're inspired. Um, and most of you, I think, are Alexander teachers. Is anyone not an Alexander teacher? Just raise your hand or wave. If there's some not Alexander teachers here, marvelous. Keep waving. I'm on two screens. Beautiful. Thank you. Yes, super. And are any of you trainees? Any trainees here, Verna? And yeah, Sabrina. Hello, Sabrina. Yes, good, good. Everybody welcome. So, anyone doesn't know my work at all, by the way, or anyone have no idea really who I am and what I do? No, you all have some idea. Jolly good. It helps. Good. So, we're here to talk about finding a deeper level of inhibition that enables us. I'm going to spotlight myself at this point. So again, if you want to say something, you really will have to wave the hand. So we're here to, as I say, which enables us this deeper level of inhibition that enables us to engage more fully with life. I came to Alexander Technique because my back seized up. I was doing research for a PhD at the time, which was boring, lonely, and for which I was completely unsuited. So really, the back seized up because of the pressure I was under and the stress I was experiencing. It was the culmination of a pattern that had been going on since childhood, working too hard, pressurizing myself, doing too much to compensate for social isolation. And I already had undiagnosed chronic fatigue. And my first lessons calmed me down, avoided the crisis. They were a lifesaver, they were a game changer. I realized very quickly that this is what I wanted to do, and I got out of the wretched PhD. The stress, of course, didn't immediately go away. And people will give you lots of advice for stress. They will say, take time out, take a holiday, go rest, go lie down. And you get lots of life advice. Oh, I won't go to the party. It'll be too stressful. I won't do that. It'll cause me too much anxiety. I won't do that. It'll be too tiring. And you can spend your life avoiding life. Anyone with chronic fatigue syndrome will know this one only too well. And I think a danger of Alexander technique, there are a couple of dangers of Alexander techniques. And one of them is that it can feed into this process of avoidance, if I can say anything like that. Stay back, do less, go lie down if things get too much. And you go to the teacher for a reset. You cannot do it for yourself, we were always told. And it can be a very passive process, which doesn't really help one to somehow break through these patterns, although in other ways, of course, it does. But there is this side of it that doesn't. I loved my first teachers, Carrington teachers. They saw me, which was a new experience. But in my first lessons, I was a passive recipient. I came away from that first lesson going, oh, my neck, it's so free. And then also, why was that called a lesson? I learnt to lie down for 10 minutes. I learnt to think my head up. I learnt to do less, to release my tensions. And it was good. And I made a lot of discoveries. It was a very valuable process, but it was not wholly satisfactory. Often I would struggle to regain any sense of the lessons during the week, and only find it somehow as I walked into the lesson or cycled to it. And because the process was supposed to do itself with rather little input from me. And this was very welcome in the early days when I was so burnt out cognitively from years of academia. But as I recovered, that didn't change. And so after 3 years, I got a place on a training course. I trained with Misha Magidov. I could have gone to the Carringtons. I had a choice, but I found the Carrington school rather hierarchical and formal and a bit dark. And at Misha's, it was light and airy, and there was a lot of laughter and a lot of fun, and people working on each other all the time. It was dynamic and it was full of life. And I must admit that attracted me. And I loved it. It was a great 3 years. It was all hands-on, as the Carringtons pretty well would have been as well. We were encouraged to release tensions. We were given strong pulls to release tensions, and then one was encouraged to learn to direct strongly upwards. And it was done for us. And then we became very confident in doing it for each other. And Misha's was great because you came out very confident in what you were doing, and everybody built practices, which was great. And certainly I built a practice very quickly. But very quickly, without the daily work of the school, my use fell apart, not just physically, but mentally again. That stress, anxiety, agitation just came swinging straight back. When we'd asked Misha, how do we keep our use going once we finish? And he would say, you get together with other teachers every week. Well, that's all very well, but life gets very busy. It's not always possible. And then the lack of self-work that we were simply not taught to work on ourselves, and that really showed up. So I knew I needed new input, and that's when I went to Miss Goldie. She was 86 at the time. For those who are not quite sure who Miss Goldie was, she trained with Alexander before the first training course. She started in 1927. She ran the small school for him, worked in the small school and then ran it for him for, I think, about 12, 14 years. I forget how long it went on. And she worked alongside him closely for the rest of his life. She was very close to him. And as I say, she was 86. She was very, very, she looked like a frail old lady. She was not. She was strong as an ox. And she was a legend, as you'll hear. Now, she saw very quickly that I was a mess. Whereas so many teachers put hands on me and went, oh, yeah, nice free joints, because I always had nice free joints. You're fine, they would say. And she saw the state of my nervous system. She saw the agitation in me. She saw that I was moving too fast inside. And so she told me I was a mess, usually in rather rude terms, but that was Miss Goldie. I would move with her hands like I'd been trained. If she put hand on my back, I would move back to it. I would give her my weight. I got told off for this. This was not okay. She made it very clear I was no longer a passive recipient in the process. I was in charge of my own weight. I was in charge of myself. And I was not to collapse in her hands. I was not to release. I was not even to follow her hands. I was instead to stay completely present. No collapsing, no directing. My directions were far too doing, it turned out. And she would bring this about. She would murmur constantly, come to quiet. Now just come to quiet. And she would start moving me, and maybe I would do too much. I would push, I would pull. No, not your thing. Not your thing. Come to quiet. Come to quiet, quiet aliveness, alive throughout. And so one would get this continual encouragement to quiet. And as I came to quiet under her hands, I found myself coming present. It was a different quality of presence than I had ever experienced before. There was a living stillness to it. The whole room would just come present somehow, and I'd receive it. And the whole thing was very three-dimensional. Now, because I was also doing natural vision work at the time, Bates work, I had a framework to interpret this. And at some point, I realized it would work the other way around as well, that if I could come into that spatial awareness using my visual processes, I could reach this same quiet state for myself. And that brings you into a different relationship with the world. So let's have our first play with this. If you would just like to turn your head in the normal way we might do, just turn your head from side to side, and you'll be aware that the muscle here turns your head and then the muscle here turns your head, and you can feel those muscles working, and it's quite doing. It's quite doing as a process. And now instead, let's find what I call the nose feather. So if you imagine a feather, a long peacock feather, a telescopic peacock feather, say, coming from your nose and encountering something in your room. I'm encountering the stem of the light, and the feather brushes the light, and there's a space. The feather marks the space between me and what I'm looking at. And if you think about it, a little peacock feather has a long peacock. It has all those wisps along its length. And if you now become aware of the wisps that are sort of measuring out the space between you and what you're looking at, and allow them all to grow apart from each other, you're allowing that space to expand. And you can help that along even by bringing that feather from your nose right through to the back of your head, which is actually where we see from, the visual cortex. So you're seeing through your head. Not everyone may be able to do this, but just invite it and see what happens. You're seeing through the head, along all those wisps of the feather and out to the light. And I wonder if you notice that the space between you and the light gets a little bigger. And then try the reverse. Try shrinking those little wisps towards each other. And you might find you start tunnel visioning down your feather to what you're seeing, and that contracts space. And then open it up again. Open those wisps up, bring it back to the back of the head. Your peripheral vision comes in as well. You open up the space between you and what you're seeing. And then just let that feather move along a little bit. My feather is now brushing the wall. It's brushing along some pictures. And you'll notice that as the feather brushes along, your head will turn to follow where you're looking. And then you can brush it back the other way, and your head will just naturally follow. And now it's not a doing process. Can you feel your head moving at all? Your neck, it's just quietly readjusting for you in perfect balance. It's just happening. And that feather is receiving the visual information, making sure you stay with that feather being long, staying with it coming from the back of the head. You've still got your peripheral vision, as you're doing this. So you're seeing the whole room and the thing that you're looking at, and the feather is receiving information for you: color, texture, form, shape, density, quality. It's almost you can almost feel what you're looking at. You get a sort of bit of mixing of senses here by using a feather. You can also use a paintbrush. You can also just be aware of where you're looking, for those who don't like imagery. And you might notice that as the space increases, and as you start receiving the world rather than grabbing onto it, that everything calms down. The eyes are probably the most reactive part of the body. And if we just let them receive rather than grabbing the world, and tracking very gently following that feather rather than jumping like mad kangaroos around the room, or staring at something, or fixing, or going to sleep, all the other things that eyes do, if we just gently keep them aware of that feather, just brushing around. But that is deeply calming to the system. Anyone like to comment on what this is like? Anyone aware of something? Don't be shy. I shall sit here till somebody says something. Ken, do you want to comment?
Well, it's very odd, this. I've been doing a very similar process with focusing on a small item in front of me.
Yes.
And then I expand my vision to the periphery and focus on, well, I don't focus. I look at the item, then the whole scene just expands.
Yes.
And that gives me a great sense of spaciousness, which relates, in fact, to time and ease. So it has and that did work for me. That worked really quite well. I got a great sense of ease in myself, and I found it very enjoyable. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes. I mean, I think there's a lot of these sort of explorations going on in the Alexander community in a way that when I first started doing this 35 years ago, there wasn't. This has become much more mainstream. Anyone else like to comment? Somebody put in the chat. It feels more easeful. Lovely. Yes. Okay. You're all being shy.
I would say,
yes.
I like the sensation of the feathers opening from each other, the little fronds opening from each other. I find that instrumental and connects a little to a favorite inhibition idea of mine, which was about noticing what's surprising me at any given moment.
Nice. Yes. Yes, that sense of space opening up is lovely, isn't it? Thank you. Thank you, Robin. Werner, where have you gone?
I didn't notice so much the difference in the ease of moving, but when you gave the instructions of reducing the distance between the wisps, I clearly felt that my head was moving forward, my body was sort of curving, and I fell into, you explained some kind of tunnel vision. That's what I noticed really clearly.
Yes, lovely. Absolutely. It's interesting to go between the two. Thank you. Agnes, and then.
Yes, it's not the first time that I do this exploration with you, but it was the first time that I had the sense that I was actually being able to brush the space with a feather. I wonder if it has to do with the fact that I was really able to imagine a very specific feather. Maybe when you said peacock feather, I really was able to imagine the shape of the feather. And then, so it was actually a different experience.
Interesting. Lovely.
The fact that I was being able to brush it, to really brush it, it was much more precise, the experience. I liked it very much. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you. Yes. Yes. And So you've made a discovery. Various people here have made discoveries, and Miss Goldie loved us to make our own discoveries, as we will see. So this state of calm, brings us also into whole body awareness. Did anyone notice, just being aware again of your feather, and notice that when you are, when the object is there and you're back to you, just find that again for a moment. And can you be aware of your own breathing? Do you become more aware of yourself as part of the room? Because normally, again, if we go into that tunnel vision, as Werner correctly called it, we just are aware of the objects around our room and we lose ourselves. Whereas when we find this space, oh yes, what I'm looking at is one end, I'm at the other end. I come present in the room. And if you can find that back of the head as well, that brings us into our volume. And so we become aware of ourselves as well as the room. And so let's just have a quick look at the autonomic nervous system. And the way I picture this is as a ladder. Have I got this up yet? 1 second. No, I haven't. Let's share. There we go. So everyone can see that, I hope. My ladder. Yep. So the autonomic nervous system it provides regulation for us, homeostatic regulation of all sorts of things, but it's also what keeps us safe. And safety is not at the top of the ladder. I got the ladder idea from a psychotherapist called Deb Dana, and she put safety at the top of the ladder. That's crazy. Nobody feels safe at the top of a ladder. Safety is at the bottom. So this is the state we've come into. We've come into this place of calm in the nervous system. And it's also called the flow state because like our eyes can just flow in there rather than darting around. It's where we rest. It's where we can digest our food. And it's also where we come present to ourselves. We come self-aware, a place of calm presence. And we also become aware of other. We come into relationship. Now, in the people who, Stephen Porges, who brought this model of the autonomic nervous system to us, he calls it the socially engaged state. But I'm aware it brings me into social engagement, as it were, with my own room. It brings us into relationship, not just with people, but with everything. But that's a place to sit around the fire, digesting one's food, chatting gently. If you're going on a shopping trip, you need to go up the ladder. You need to get your sympathetic nervous system engaged. And that's the part of the system that raises the heartbeat, gets the blood pressure up a little bit so that you can actually function and move around. And you've got energy coursing that can allow you to live your life. And when we come into this alert state, not a hyper alert, eyes darting around state, but just a quietly alert state, this state that Goldie called quiet aliveness, then you mobilize your sympathetic and parasympathetic together, and it's a place of increased energy, but it's still calm. And that's what we want for living, focused activity for action. And the more we can engage these two together, the more we can stay in that alert state as we increase, as we do more, as it were. Can we keep that going for the entire of a shopping trip, or do we start getting frustrated and blown up after a while? Those who were at the session last Monday will know my analogy of a shopping trip. So the more activity you can keep this calm in, that's resilience. And that's what we want for being able to stay calm in life. If once we lose it, as we call it, once that sympathetic nervous system starts taking over, that's when we flip into the danger states. Feeling angry, defensive, frustrated, irritated, bored, cold, fearful, desiring to run away, worrying, anxious, all that agitated stuff of whatever sort. If we go right to the top of the ladder, we get to life threat. That's when we start to freeze, to flop, to shut down, to go into sort of real pleaser states, all sorts of ways we can play this out. And what we want to do is be living in these bottom two rungs of the ladder. And that's very much what the technique is about. But particularly it was so to Miss Goldie. So we want to be aware of the world outside and of our internal awareness, our internal sense together. But back when I was working with Miss Goldie, I didn't understand that. My idea was self-awareness was to go inside. If somebody moved me backwards and forwards, I would go inside, check out my hips and go, wow, hips moving, that's lovely. And no teacher had ever picked me up on that one. And for me, having been a very dissociated person, it was very nice to be able to feel my body and feel it moving. Miss Goldie gave me an earful for that. She told me I was taking my mind into my body. I had to bring my mind back up to my brain. So this was a new concept. And just to define it as she did, the mind is that aspect of consciousness which can move around. Now, for Germans, there is no German equivalent word for mind. So just use the word mind and just see if you can experience that bit of yourself. So you can perhaps take your mind down to your hips and go, oh yeah, hips, and then bring it back again. And you can feel something traveling up and down. Yeah? So let's do a little game on that. So I want you to put your feet flat on the floor if they're not already so, and just take your mind right down into your foot. Those of us who live in an expanded field of awareness won't want to do this, but go for it anyway as a piece of science. So just go right down into your foot, really put your whole concentration on that foot. And then, now you're down there, just give consent to wiggle your toes and notice what happens. And now, fish your mind back out again. You might be aware of something traveling back up. And bring it to your brain. And what Miss Goldie would point out to me, but the brain isn't here. The brain is above the eyebrows. She said there's another 4 inches here that people forget they've got. So bring it right up here. Mind is at the brain is right at the top of you. And look out. Look out at the world. Engage with the world across your feather, across space. And now you're going to give consent for those toes to wiggle. Now, the very mention of foot, you probably go back down again. So you might like to picture a foot in the air, and you're projecting the messages out to this mental image of foot that's in the air in front of you. I give consent for my toes to wiggle, and keep your mind up here, and then somehow let it happen. Trust that the messages get through, she would say. And just wiggle those toes. And just notice the difference with the first time. And let's just do this one more time. Again, take your mind right down into the other foot this time. There's nothing like contrast for waking up what's happening. So again, go right down there. And you might notice in this moment, are you really seeing the room anymore? Or are you seeing a visual replay of the room, which is actually what's happening, a sort of dumbed down version of it? And are you even aware of the rest of your body, or are you just aware of foot at this point? And again, give consent for the toes to wiggle. And again, bring that mind back up, right the way up, tracing it back up the body, up to the head, right up to the top of the head. Again, look out. And now notice, is there still an awareness of where foot is? So you've still got a connection between you and foot. You don't actually have to go down there to find it. As you're looking out, you know where foot is. And just give consent to send that message to the image of the foot in the wall, that's out in the air. Project your directions, just give consent and let the toes of the foot wiggle. Okay, anyone like to say what they experienced here? And don't be shy. either put your hand up or Joe.
Yes, sorry, something's happened to our computer screen and we can't actually find the icon that says put your hand up.
No worry.
For me, it seemed just now that that my foot was somewhere else. It just did it. My foot did it on its own, rather than yes, didn't feel like I was telling it to do it. It just did it.
With the second one.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, lovely, beautiful. Thank you. Anyone else notice a difference? Catherine?
Yes, I found for me it was easier, when I was looking out and being, up here, to actually be aware of my toes and wriggle them, where my foot actually is. I found that I couldn't sort of project my foot in the middle distance, so to speak.
Yes.
So for me, it just worked having the two together, I think.
Lovely.
Yeah.
And did you or anyone else notice a difference in quality between the first time and the second time? Was one tighter? Angela, do you want to describe that? Unmute. Can you unmute?
Sorry, I don't speak English so well, but it was a totally difference between the first and the second time, because I had all the lengths of my body, my mind and my toes. I was very in my whole body.
Lovely. Yes. Yes. And was there a different...
and also in the surrounding.
Beautiful. Thank you. The whole of you was present. Lovely. Thank you, Angela. Maita, I don't know how you pronounce your name.
Yes, it's perfect. It's Maite. Can you hear me?
I can. Thank you. Good to meet you.
Yeah, the second time was totally different. It felt much lighter, as Angela said, and then my breathing worked better.
Fantastic.
And the first time, when you said go to your feet, even my eyes went down. So it was not only that my mind went to my foot, but my eyes went to my foot, and the movement felt very heavy compared to the second time.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Maita. Marco.
Yes, my experience was to be very difficult not to have at least a part of the mind try to wander into the foot, just for to control if it is wiggling right now or so. Seems always a little bit of my mind localized in the foot just for control's sake or something. So it was not easy for me.
And that again might be a common experience for people. We're not used to it. It certainly took me a long time with Goldie. She was telling me off for a long time before I could stay out of the way. Yes, one wants to keep that control. Thank you. Kay. You unmute, my dear.
But yeah, two words. The first, effortful. The second, effortless.
Beautiful. Thank you. And did you notice a difference between the toes moving on a block and the toes moving individually? That's a matter of interest. Yes, it's like the second, the whole foot can come alive. The first one, the toes move as a block, don't they? Peter.
I'm smiling, Penelope, because I got drowsy. I got a bit sleepy. So I'm hearing now that there were extra instructions. I never heard them at all. That's what went on for me. You talked about quiet aliveness. I had a sleepy type of aliveness.
Yes. And Miss Goldie was actually very clear that it's coming to quiet is not about going to sleep, because that's what we tend to do. The minute we go quiet, we associate it with going to sleep. And actually, it's actually a very awake state, but it can take a while to find that, particularly if one is actually there is residual tiredness in the system, the system will tend to go quiet and will tend to go to sleep. So that's a sort of natural process. But what we want to move towards is it actually being a very wakeful state. So interesting you said that. Thank you. Julia, and then we'll move on.
Hi. I may have misunderstood what you said, but I found the projecting another foot out really disconcerting. It was like I had to grow another limb. It wasn't me anymore. What have I misunderstood there? I got really, really disconnected.
Yes, it's again, different tools, different methods, different images work for different people. It's what I found I had to do for years, for quite a time, in order to make my mind not go to the foot, because the very word foot would associate me with going down. And so for me, projecting an image, but for you, maybe that's not needed. You can just project the direction. I allow the foot to wiggle, and that is sufficient. Alexander, of course, worked with mirrors in the early days, and it's probable that he directed the instruction to his reflection. So he was actually working by sending the image in the mirror to do the action. That is a possibility. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Did you manage to find the difference, or did it just throw you too much?
I'm afraid it threw me.
Okay.
It's a very interesting observation about the mirror. I shall think about that and work with it. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, so what we've just discovered as well is something that Alexander emphasizes a lot in constructive conscious control, particularly, is the separation of thinking and doing, that they don't happen in the same place. We actually need to separate between the two. And when we go inside and check, that's when we get feeling. We're feeling it out. And again, Alexander told us not to use the word feel, which is disconcerting, because feel actually has, it's, am I not allowed to feel my emotions? Yes, of course I am. What we don't want is that going into the body and feeling out what's happening, because as you discovered, it actually creates tension and disconnection from the whole. So what we want, though, is this process of awareness. Various people commented that when they stayed with the mind in the brain, they were aware of the foot, they were aware of the whole body. So we want the direction of the travel to be, we want to be receiving the information, not going down there and forcing the information. So awareness is an intelligent state. It brings us out of checking and doubting, which again narrows the focus. When we come into this whole body awareness, it's an intelligent state where we allow the intelligence of the foot to sort itself. And Alexander talked about the body being intelligent. He would talk about intelligent knees. We'll come back to that. Now, another aspect that I've talked about is that Miss Goldie was very clear. I was not to release. I was not to let go of tone, because as she was working on me, she'd be maybe taking my shoulder out, and it would feel to me like it was tense, because she was actually putting my shoulders, it turned out, were a bit collapsed, because I was so busy releasing them, I'd over-released them. And so she would wake them up and she would get them feeling toned, except to me, it would feel tense and I would want to let it go again, and I got told off. So because her work didn't release me, it didn't take me apart, it actually put me back together. At one point, she would even do this to me to connect the arm back to the shoulder. So she was integrating rather than releasing. And so let's play with this. And this, of course, is very, very important for anyone who's hypermobile, whose joints pop out, because again, that can be a problem. If they're over-released, they can pop out the joints. We need this connection. So let's play. What you're going to do is lift a shoulder up to your ear, get it nice and tense. And now think, I can release my shoulder, I can do less with my shoulder, and just let it release. Okay, very nice, nothing wrong with it. Now let's do that again. Bring it right up to your ear. And now you can think, I can do less with my shoulder. I can do less with my shoulder. I can let my shoulder be free, but you're not immediately releasing. Instead, you're letting the body intelligence sort it. Just keep saying it. I can do less with my shoulder. I can allow my shoulder to be free. I can let my shoulder do less. And these little phrases we have. I can let my shoulder do less. I can do less with my shoulder. I can let my shoulder be free. Okay, thanks, Brenda. Thank you. I can let my shoulder be free. I can do less with my shoulder. I can do less with my shoulder. Okay, everybody's shoulder back to a reasonable place. Anyone like to comment on the difference between the first time and the second time? Christine, you want to say something? Yes. Can't hear you. Take the headphones off. Have you got audio switched on? Have you got your microphone, your speaker on the computer switched up? Yeah. Yeah, there we go.
So I quite enjoyed that because especially sometimes as also coming from an actor's practice, sometimes you are to have a shoulder this way or that way or in a different state, and the direction really allowed for so much space and breath and ease. And then I was like, okay, that I actually thought, oh, I can actually say like that. And then I had to look at myself and be like, is my shoulder still up here? Because it doesn't feel like it's. So that was lovely.
Nice. Space, breath, ease. Lovely. Anyone else like to comment on what happened?
Penelope, can you hear me?
I can, Ruth.
Yes. Just very quickly, it's almost as if you were thinking from an acting point of view, that you could be in that state of being like the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and you would be able to find ease in that position. Because what I felt was I didn't have to, I mean, my shoulder was releasing, but I felt that I could leave it there in that position, high, and still feel free.
Nice. Nice. Absolutely. And anyone notice things happening in other parts of the body? Because presumably the first time you just felt it in the first. Julia, do you want to comment what it was like?
Yes, I connected with my sit bone.
Nice.
On the opposite side.
Yes, on the opposite side. Yeah. Lovely. Anyone notice things happening in the rib system, in the other shoulder? Yes, yes. So again, what we're getting, rather than just freeing a localized place, I released my shoulder, what we actually got was an overall integration of the shoulder girdle on the rib cage, on the torso. Would you agree with that? Yes, it's a very different experience, isn't it? And as you say, you can then hold any position for you actors who have to hold these states. Lovely. Good. So, having got me in this state of calm and not letting go of tone, she would often begin the lesson by taking me into the chair, and then she would work on one arm and bring it back very precisely into the body, and then my other arm would be hanging down, and then she would say, now you move the other arm. Panic. No teacher has ever asked me to move an arm for myself. So the first time it was a complete shock. But anyway, I did my best. And of course, my mind went in there and controlled the process. No, that wasn't good enough. Anyway, so as the lessons went on, I began to be able to learn to keep my mind out of that arm and somehow give consent from the brain for the hand to quietly move itself onto my lap. And that was amazing. That was very different. So the lessons continued, and lesson 6 started as normal. I turned up, I stood in front of the chair, and she attacked me. How many lessons have you done with me so far? 6, Miss Goldie. I don't know why you bother. You have not begun to think for yourself away from here. And she berated me all that. I was in tears. And a part of my head was thinking, I don't need to take this. I could walk away from this. And another part of me said, I can show the old bat. So when I went home that night, I wanted to make a cup of tea. And I went to pick up the kettle in my usual just get in there and do it way. And I thought, no, stop. So I stopped and I let the whole room come present. I came to quiet. As she taught me, I came present to myself, to the room, to the kettle. Of course, all of this wasn't defined. I have put words to this. As the years have gone by, I've been able to put words to this. At that point, it was just an experience. And I came quiet and I looked at the kettle. I brought my mind to my brain. And then I gave consent for my hands to move itself to the kettle. And it did. And it took hold of the kettle completely responsively, and it lifted that kettle with exactly the right amount of force, because there was no window in that kettle. I had no idea how much water was in it. It used exactly the right amount of force to lift that kettle. And it was a completely different experience. And in that moment, I was in relationship to the kettle. So let's play with that, because the way Misha showed us, he would sometimes show us how to pick up a phone. And so I'll put my, that's nice and visible, I'll put that on there. And he would say, right, now what you do is you look at the phone and then you let go. And then you let go of the intent to pick it up. And then you let yourself go into, you give your primary directions, neck free, head forward and up, back lengthen and widen, and then you do a lunge, and you make sure your back is back, and then you take your, let your head lead to take you forwards, and when you're at the right place, then you pick up the phone, and then off you go making your phone call. So that's all very well, but I never yet saw a child pick something up like that. That is really not a very natural way of doing things, is it? And also, the phone could go on holiday while I'm preparing myself and I wouldn't notice. At that point, the phone and me have nothing to do with each other. Whereas when a child picks something up, they are in relationship to that, as I was with my kettle. So let's play with that. Let's just take a cup, if you've all got a cup or something that you can take hold of. Just put it on your desk. I'll hold it so that you can see, but you can just have it on your table. And just do the first way first that you will have learnt in your the standard Alexander way, where you think about picking it up and then you say no. You just completely let go of it. You dissociate from it in many ways. And you come back to neck free, head forward and up, back lengthen and widen. Organize yourself, let yourself turn to look at it, and then let your head lead towards it if you need to do a bend, and pick up the cup. Okay. So, and I'm sure that was very nice. I'm sure you all did that very well. And now let's try this other way, where we just come into relationship with the cup. Just have your nose feather, that's closer in, but just being aware of all those spaces between the wisps of the feather, seeing it from the back of the head, and the rest of the room is present too. The rest of the room is present. The cup is part of the room. Just come to that quiet. Your eyes can slide away from the feather away from the cup. You can slide the feather away from the cup and back again. It's not drawing you. It's not shouting at you, as it were. You're free to come and go. This is a good sign. If you can let go with your eyes, it's a good way of not being over involved with something. Just seeing from the back of the head, seeing all the spaces of the room, the space to the cup, space to my desk, the space to the wall. So all these spaces, and I'm here as well. I'm in the room. I'm in that space. Nothing matters in this moment. Now, with my mind in the brain, I'm aware of how far away my hand is. I'm not in my hand, but yet I'm in relationship to my hand, just as I'm in relationship to the cup. My fingers are lengthening away down, and I'm aware of them lengthening away down. So just as there's space to the cup, so there's space to the fingers. And when they're ready, my fingers can begin to come to life. And they can take a little flow in the air. And then they can just happen to fold around the cup. And you might find they just fold around rather than grabbing. And that the arm can actually adjust the amount of work that is needed, the amount of tone that's needed to hold that cup, depending how much liquid is in it. Cups, like kettles, are interesting for this. They change weight, they change temperature. You can take your hand off it. You can stop just before because you're not in that grab mode, whereas before you might not have been able to stop at the last minute. You can stop. You can just let the hand touch, even before letting the fingers fold around. So there's all sorts of, and now you can take a drink. Anyone like to, again, comment on how that was? I haven't tried this one in a beginner's work, in an introductory workshop before, so tell me how it went. Agnes.
Yeah, well, there's two things. One is that I find it almost impossible to go back to not being aware of the, being aware.
Well, that's not a bad thing, is it?
unless I go with automatic pilot. So
Yes.
it's either one thing or the other, but being aware and not, so that's one thing. But also it's very different for me to do it with the left hand. I'm left-handed. So there's much more work to do.
Yes.
Than the right.
Yes. Yes, Delsart had a wonderful phrase, our minds are tangled in our bodies. And by goodness, the mind tends to be tangled in the doing hand, in the dominant hand. Yes. So again, bringing the mind back to the brain is really untangling that. Yes, thank you. Anyone else like to comment? Christy, yes.
I had the lovely image came to mind of an octopus and how their brains are, in their limbs. And I was like, yes, well, same.
Yes, absolutely. I love being an octopus. Yes, quite. Thank you. Nice one. Irma, did you want to say something there?
Hello.
Hello?
Yes, I've had the experience of that during a congress, and I even go a bit far with holding a cup or cup holding me experience. So this connection between cup and the body, and this thing you were saying about the relation between body and the cup, it's very unusual for our normal life. We never think about things around us in this way. And actually it gives me the feeling of this Alexander feeling, which sometimes quite hard to get to. And with this feather and other things that you're saying, it gets more clear for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, lovely. Thank you. Yes, it makes it more accessible, doesn't it? Ken?
Yeah. So it's easier because Alexander technique, it's very complicated to explain. And things that we are doing today with you, it's simply to explain to people who have no idea about Alexander technique.
Yes. Yes, thank you. Absolutely. Yes. Ken?
I found it really a lesson in my attention. If I focused all my attention on the cup, I was very awkward and what have you. But once I expanded my awareness and my attention softened, then everything seemed to flow a lot easier. So it's just a question of almost concentration, attention. How much attention do I need to put into this to do it, and do I let my body do it? It was very revealing. It was very revealing.
Brilliant. Thank you. So this is a flavor. This is a flavor that, and again, what you're all doing here is making your own discoveries. Miss Goldie would say, don't wait for the teacher to tell you. You discover it for yourself. And nobody had given me that permission before. And she pointed out that this is how Alexander developed the technique. He could not have developed the technique through direction. Inhibition is the route to discovery. We have to come to this place of quiet. It brings us calm, it brings us self-aware, and it also brings the system neuroplastic. Presence brings in neuroplasticity, which allows us to allow something different to happen and allows that change actually to be embedded in the system. So, and I had a biological background. I mean, to me, explaining this in terms of modern neurology and Goldie's work, I always felt would have the opportunity to be explained with modern terms. And it's taken a while for neurology to catch up so we can do that. But I think all the explanations for this are now there in modern neurology. So here it's all about coming present. It's all about, but of course one is constantly losing presence. And in her lessons, I noticed that as she moved me, if I allowed my mind to go inside to check, sorry, I'll spot myself again. If I allowed my mind to go inside to check what was happening as she moved me, my vision dimmed and I lost sight of the room and I got shouted at. Whereas if somehow I stayed present with this room as she moved me, then I could allow her to move me without interfering. And for this, my eyes didn't have to fix on a point. They could just flow and stay seeing. And again, some years later, I discovered I could reverse this, that I could. So just try leaning forwards and backwards even with this. Just let your eyes take your nose feather and you're just going to track it now down the wall. And when it gets to a certain point, you'll probably find your head nods nicely on your atlanto-occipital. Now, you could, of course, let the head carry on taking you down into a good old slump. But if instead you think about keeping your length, then the next joint to move are the hips. Do this on a chair on which I've got it. Floor. So that your eyes will take you forward and your eyes will take you back. We don't have time today because we've taken an hour already, but just being aware of how if you stay with that nose feather brushing down the floor, you could take it into standing, but we're not going to today. But that will move you. And it will take me into the chair. It will allow an unfamiliar bend to happen. It will allow something unfamiliar to come about because we're staying outside the body with the goal of action. We're not going inside and feeling it out. Anyone like to comment on that briefly? Did anyone notice, be aware of how the eyes can lead the body into action? How the eyes can lead the body into movement? Yeah, I'm just watching the time here. And of course, Frank Pierce-Jones discovered this. He discovered that only when he came into this expanded field of awareness could he let AR, Alexander's brother, take him out of the chair without him jumping. And also, he said, I could then do it for myself. So this was discovered back in the 1930s. Nobody picked up on it. It didn't become mainstream, which is such a pity. Alexander never named this quality of the eyes, though I have no doubt he was using it himself. But because his vision was actually so good, he hadn't got the contrast, so he never realized it was happening. I think that's why he never named spatial awareness in this way, because his own spatial awareness was fully present. Miss Goldie emphasized thinking, brain work. And her favorite book was Constructive Conscious Control, because that is the one that is about thinking. And I recently discovered it was FM's favorite book as well, which was nice. So I think it wasn't primary control that he saw as the most important part of his work. It was the thinking to bring about the primary control. And it would seem that thinking, the word thinking as they were using it, didn't just mean those cognitive sentences, I let my neck be free and so on. It is also sensory thinking. It's that awareness of yourself in movement, aware of your mind in your foot in relationship to your body. That is also thinking, because it's presence, it's mental presence. And the other big word for Miss Goldie was choice. We have a choice how to respond. And she emphasized for me coming to quiet so that one could make a fresh choice. Because, as I said, I was someone who rushed about doing too much. Some of you might identify with that. And she would very much emphasize come to calm, come to this place of quiet presence, and then you can have a choice how you then go about things. And that reserved my energy. And it was about not switching off, because I was forever switching off. I would switch into going into my mind, switch into just a dopey state, switch into feeling tired, whatever. If I could come back to this presence, just this present awareness, let my eyes lead myself into movement, let my fingers lead into movement, then it just reset my energy. I no longer had to lie down to reset. And I still do use semi-supine, of course, but it's not the only method. And if it means I can do a reset in the supermarket or when I'm out walking the dog, if I'm getting tired, I can just come to this quiet place and reset my energy. And that was an amazing discovery to make. Initially, of course, it took a long time of work. I could be working on coming present for maybe 30 minutes before that reset happens. Now I can do it very quickly. So again, this is something many of you may need to do some work on. So, Alexander wrote, I wish it to be understood. I'll just bring this quote up so you can read it as I say it. I wish it to be understood that throughout this book, that's CCC, I use the term conscious guidance and control to indicate primarily a plane to be reached rather than a method of reaching it. Now, teachers have been arguing about this sentence for years, and the interpretation, and I'm not going to pretend I have the definitive interpretation, but my understanding of that is this plane to be reached means this state of awareness from which you can make fresh choices. Descriptions of FM working from Erica Whitaker, there's a number of descriptions in early texts of him working, and they describe him standing back from a pupil and just from a student and just looking at them and somehow drinking in all the information from them. Erica says that he saw with his ears and heard with his eyes. So again, this sense of a very multisensory drinking in the information from the student of what's going on in their bodies. And then he would just allow himself to be drawn in, and his hands would go where they were needed. There was no, I suspect, well, now I'll do that move with the shoulder and now I'll do that move with the neck. He was discovering those moves as he was doing them. He was allowing his interaction, his relationship with the student's body and his own body to inform his hands, to inform his whole being and his thinking, how to work with that student in that moment. And I don't think this is in the books. This is what Goldie taught me. She told me this is how FM lived and discovered the work. Thank you for coming, Jane. That's lovely to see you. But this is what a musician or an actor needs. I remember hearing descriptions of actors, talks from an actor once, where she said, I stand in the wings, I give my primary directions, neck free, head forward and up, back, lengthen and widen, and then I go on stage and I forget about it. I get on with my acting. But that's not the way Goldie taught it. Goldie taught one just to come to this quiet toned presence, and then one can keep that with you on the stage. So you can be in relationship to yourself as you're doing this incredibly passionate, piece in the violin sonata or whatever, or an impassioned piece of acting, and you can still be present to yourself and making fresh choices. I'm going to tighten my neck, I don't need to. As you are still in that relationship with yourself, the audience, the fellow actors, your emotions, the text, everything is present together. And I've worked with musicians who were able to do an entire concerto as the soloist and keep that going. And that, I think, is what we're about. And to me, that's that conscious plane to be reached. So constructive guidance and control, it's not just talking about those cognitive sentences, I must keep my neck free, which actually puts a lot of musicians off the technique. One's heard of people saying, oh, I'm not going to the technique because they get you thinking about your neck rather than the music. And I don't think that's what Alexander meant. He meant this plane of conscious awareness from which one has choice, and one can use a cognitive sentence, but one can do it out of awareness and choice instead. The word control, I think, can imply conscious control, and we can leap to thinking that that is control as interference and control. German, of course, has two words for it. English doesn't. There is that other sense of the word control, which is controls in a car. Now, the lights, the indicators, the steering wheel, the gears, they're all the controls of the car. They're not controlling me. They are tools I can use to navigate my car through the city. And I think that's the sense in which we are using the word control. So where does direction fit in? I didn't use directions with Goldie, as it always got me shouted at for interfering. So I just came to quiet. And then after a while, when things had progressed, she showed me that as I would sit, and you can do this with me, my legs would just switch off. I'd just plonk my legs. They'd be in the right position. They'd be under me doing the right things. But actually, they were dead things. And she said, Alexander would go around the training course saying, you've got intelligent knees. You haven't got intelligent knees. And she said, in this moment, your knees are not intelligent. So what on earth does that mean? So I realized after a while that to bring the knees intelligent, I could leave my mind where it was, but I could direct energy through the body to my knees and indeed to my legs, so that they became intelligent again. Now, this is embodiment, and it's very different from directing my knees by thinking from here, oh yes, send my knees forward. And that's a sort of more doing process because I've gone out and round. To her, she would talk about letting the messages go through. One directs through the body. Alexander talked about this very early on when he talked about standing back in 1910. And he would say, as you're standing, this is in the door procedure that he describes in 1910. He said, as you're standing, you've got energy going all the way around your body, keeping the tone alive. And you can cut that energy to move back in the hips. Carrington picks up on this and he says, energy is what mobilizes us. And if I want to shift my weight from hip to hip, all I've got to do is send my energy across to that leg. So I'll stand up and do this. So direction is energizing through the myofascia for movement. So you're just standing on two legs and you can send energy from one hip to the other and you will move. And you can send energy back again. You can come back to neutral. You can go the other way. You can take one foot forward and do a nice weight transfer by sending the energy through the hips and back again. This is Delsart work, actually. We talk about this in my history project. So then we can, when we lifted the cup, you might have noticed that I said, mind in the brain, but there's a space between me and the hand, and you can then flow that energy down the hand. So the hand comes away to pick up your cup. And so this is where we take this calm, embodied place. Now we've got energy not pushing down through the body, but flowing. And we can then, we're being octopuses. The octopus flows the energy down the arm, and the whole arm is sensitive. The whole arm is intelligent. And I think this is where we find out how to be octopuses with the whole of our bodies. Footballers will tell you their brains are in their feet. Their feet know what to do. A pianist, their brain is in their fingers. Their fingers know what to do. The whole body is intelligent, and modern neurology is finally catching up with this. Alexander was talking about this a long time ago. Sitting still and directing is fine, but change is made through movement. This is what Goldie said. And again, I think in the modern technique, we can do a lot of lying still in semi-supine, thinking directions, but it doesn't make any difference unless you take that direction into movement. That's when the change happens. And it was Marjorie Barlow who said, sitting still and directing is fine, but change is made through movement. You have to take it into movement. And this flowing, directed, energizing is what brings us safely up to that second rung of the ladder, giving us more resilience in modern life. Does anyone want to comment on everything we've just played with there? That flowing energy to move. Catherine, you've got you're unmuted. Does that mean you want to say something?
Oh, I didn't realize I was unmuted.
Okay. Don't worry. Does anyone want to comment on flowing energy for directions? As I say, I'm watching the time, so somebody say something.
Penelope.
Yes.
We can also just have that flow of energy without moving.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
I've just experimented just now with the standing just now. We can flow the energy and we can move from one hip to the other. We can move our weight from one leg to the other, but we can also be moving without any kind of movement. The energy can still, the energy can flow quite comfortably from one place to another without an actual movement.
Absolutely. And that's what Goldie would talk to me about, no switching off. There's no switching off any part of the body. If one's standing, very often people switch off their arms. And what happens if we switch the arms on, even if I'm standing quietly, and it makes a difference to the tone of the whole body. If I switch the arms off, something goes soggy through the whole of me. If I switch the arms on, something comes alive again. And Alexander's word was readiness. The readiness is all. He put that when he gave a book to a teacher who was going to work alongside him. He always did a little inscription at the beginning, and that was the quote he always used: "The readiness is all." So again, this is not about going quiet and sleepy. This is about coming ready for life with this switched on, flowing energy, whether one is moving or whether one is still. So thank you, Ruth, for clarifying that. Anyone else want to speak to this? Because this is where things change for us. Yeah. Loretta.
This way of thinking about the work just makes the work and me feel much more alive. It feels that you're in a flow of life, and it feels much less mechanical and much less. And you're making me think very differently about this idea of thinking, which I've become a bit alienated from the Alexander world with the emphasis on thinking, and I've begun to sort of think of it, it's all part of our colonialism of head over body, and it's a big problem, we shouldn't be thinking this way. But you're talking about the intelligence of the body and a different formulation, if you like, of thinking and sensing and being and the interplay of life. And it just feels really exciting, and it's kind of melding well with where I've been going with my work.
Lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sabrina.
Yeah, I would certainly echo that this resonates very well with what I'm doing with my work, the concept that change to be somehow meaningful has to be taken into movement, has to be taken into activity. It's very much with what I'm doing. It's very clearly, wow, this is so much more challenging, but also so much more rewarding.
Yes, it takes a lot of work to make this a constant in one's being, but that's the work to be done.
Yeah, and to always keep getting it back. And one thing that feels like right on the frontier of what I'm working with now is this concept of intelligent knees, of flowing energy into the knees and letting them come alive. Because I noticed at one point that after doing some getting in and out of a chair in a lesson, that, oh, my knees are notably more forward. I'm putting less weight on things that make me uncomfortable when I sit. And I wonder how much I can stay this way. And yeah, sure enough, within maybe it was 10 minutes, maybe it was 20 minutes, I don't know. My muscles along the shins are just aching with soreness and tension. And
takes a
it's like,
while to
okay,
take.
how can I come back to this by
Yes.
my own choice? How can I let this be a place I can be when my muscles rebel against it? And this is something I'm interested to play with, this way of letting energy come to the knees and to other places for other purposes.
Yeah. And you just made a good experiment there. That's fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Sabrina. So students love this approach, this thinking and activity that very quickly gives them access to freeing their own necks, to moving themselves in and out of chairs, to moving more efficiently at home. I had a pupil recently, came to me a few months ago, and she'd had 2 brain aneurysms that had actually paralyzed her legs. Rather miraculously, according to the doctors, she got that back again. She's only in her 50s. And her legs began to work again, but the enforced rest, and she then had arthritis in both knees. So when she first came to me, she hobbled in on a stick. She was very, very uncertain of her movements. It was tremendous pain getting in and out of a chair. She felt very unbalanced, very unsafe. And I taught her how to free her neck the very first session with the side-to-side movement and also taking the feather up and down. And the second session, I was able to get her moving on and off a chair by putting a chair in front of her so that when she came forward with her eyes, she felt safe to land on the chair, that she wasn't going to fall. By lesson 3, she was able to do it for herself. It was so fast. And by lesson 5, I got her on and I was getting her getting on and off the floor by herself, which was unthinkable even in lesson 3. She's now taking walks at home with her husband by her, but without her stick. We've begun to work on taking a step forward, letting a step forward happen, and she's able to allow a release of a leg forward without feeling she's going to fall. This change is going so fast. And again, I think this is, now not all students respond that quickly, but these processes, they really do allow the neuroplasticity back in. They allow the brain really to find itself again. She's finding these natural movements so quickly. And I'm not putting hands on her very much. She's doing most of the work for herself. I'm not against hands. You know, hands are there for when they're needed, but we can become over-reliant on our hands. If my pupil can do it for them, can find the changes for themselves, I'd rather they did that, because then they can go home and they know they can do it for themselves. So I interviewed 20 teachers years ago about their lessons with Goldie, and 2 of them told me that at some point they said to Miss Goldie, "I don't know how to thank you enough for what you've given me." And Miss Goldie replied, "You cannot, because I have given you the gift of life," which on one level seems rather an arrogant thing to say, but actually was true. And I think she certainly experienced that Alexander gave her life back. And she gave me my life back. And but this is a process of rescuing our lives, of taking our life back, of allowing the life to flow. So I could tell you so much more about Miss Goldie, and I don't have time today. But in my book, of course, I talk about her a lot. And the book study club, we are studying these methods and taking them much further and really embedding them in your system. So let me tell you about the book study club. We meet every 2 weeks for 90 minutes at a time on Zoom. So it's always international community. Anyone with a commitment to working on themselves is welcome. Goldie only wanted to work with people who were willing to do the work. That was what that challenge on week 6 was about. Are you willing to work or not? I've discovered later she challenged a lot of people round about lesson 6. Are you with me or not? So anyone with that commitment is welcome. We work systematically through the book. Each session, there's a certain number of allocated pages, maybe somewhere between 3 and 10 pages, depending on where we're at. And in between, you just need to read it, to play with it, because just thinking it, just theory without practical is of no use whatsoever. You need to embody what's happening. And I also encourage people to take a study buddy. So they get together with their study buddy and they actually practice teaching it, practice receiving it, and get to discuss it with them together and understand it together. And that's very, very valuable. And in sessions then, at least half of the time is actually going through the explorations together, as we have today, getting feedback. We work at the pace the group wants to go. So I actually never know how long a group is going to work, but it's round about somewhere between 18 months and 2 years. It takes a long time to go through the whole book. But it really does allow time. People are so different at the end than they were at the beginning. It gives time for really slow, integrated change. And each chapter builds on the previous one. So you are continually reinforcing your understanding of the previous chapters as we work through, just as we have today. We look in more detail at vision problems or breathing issues, more detail on core muscles and core work than is actually given in the book. I've made the whole process of the pulls for those who make the book much more gentle, much more integrative now. So there's a lot of new stuff we do in the book study club. The book is fantastic, and we've now taken it to the next level as well. And so people really are able to address their own specific issues, a lameness or a neck problem. There was a woman whose neck was really like that. At the beginning of the group, she was in her 80s. That neck really came back. It was wonderful. It took quite a time to do that, but it happened, and so on. And there's also people also bring client issues with their students. You know, I've got a student who has this, and we talk through how they might approach it, and so on. So it's very much for the people who are present. And of course, because we're working together for that length of time, it really bonds as a group. People make friendships they still keep, I'm told. And so we work through the entire body. We work on ensuring that every single muscle group is in place, that you really know how every aspect of the torso breathes. Thank you, Loretta, Abigail. But we're always bringing it back to the whole. We work on the specifics and then we always bring it back to the whole. So always we're working from a place of integration. And because we're working online, everybody learns to work online. Now, whether you want to work online or not with pupils is, of course, entirely your choice. But online is a tremendous discipline, because online you have to learn to observe and you have to learn to verbalize. And then you have to learn to get your students to verbalize back to you what happened. And that's something that Alexander actually emphasized in his first training course. Well, the observing and the verbalizing, not the getting the student to say anything. That wasn't allowed in those days. But it's something that's been missed. It was missed on my training course. It's missed on a lot of training courses now. And it's incredibly valuable. And it does really, again, quicken the process, quicken the awareness to use that word quickening as an awakening, an enlivening for the pupil and also for you. And it gets the pupil more engaged. and they're happier teacher, happier pupil. It builds teachers' confidence because they have more tools, they know more what they're doing, they know why they're doing what they're doing. You know, why am I doing hands on back of chair? I feel like a praying mantis. You know, let's discover what it's really about, and so on. So teachers do tell me that it builds confidence in their work. They know what they're teaching, how to deal with different issues. They can direct their students better with or without hands, get them engaged and working at home. Happier teachers, happier students. We can be over-reliant on our hands. That's something this Marjorie Barlow says. And you get to develop your own self-practice with far more than semi-supine. And as a teacher, it's as crucial that we work on ourselves as musicians. If a musician doesn't do their practice, they don't develop. We need to be doing much more self-practice. And so we need much more knowledge of how to be doing that every moment of the day. As I brush my hair, as I clean my teeth, as I wash up, as I drive the car, we can be doing so much more for ourselves. So it starts Monday, the 20th of October, which is not this Monday coming, but the next one. It's at 2 o'clock in the afternoon UK time, which in Germany is 3 o'clock. In the States, for New York, that's 9 in the morning. It's a bit tough on Californians for this one. It's 6 o'clock in the morning, but people have been known to turn up in pajamas, holding a cup of coffee, or even join from their bed. On Zoom, anything is welcome. People join from the office, but with their cameras off. You know, it's a very fluid process. Zoom allows that. I keep the price low. I should be charging double for this for what you get, but it's €25 a month, which is nothing. And for those who even find that a struggle, there's a helping hand rate of 20 a month. And anyone who needs that helping hand rate is welcome to take it. And there's no upfront commitment. So you can join in and do it for a month, do it for 2 or 3 months, see if it fits you, your lifestyle, where you're at in your life, and so on. And if it's not, well, that's okay. You just quietly drop out, nothing lost, and you might surprise yourself that actually you can fit it into your life. People tell me that the minimum needed is about an hour in between sessions. The sessions themselves are an hour and a half. You need at least a minimum, say, of an hour of preparation, reading and playing. Some people take a lot longer. If you work with a study buddy, that also. Some people work with a study buddy every week, some every fortnight, every 2 weeks. So it's very much up to you how much you do. And but as I say, it's not very much time commitment for what it is. So jump in and have a go. And I hope many of you will. And at the end of this session, I will send you all the recording and also a link to the landing page where you can take another look at what's there. Thank you, Tamara. And you can sign up if you wish. And do feel free again to email with any more questions about that. So anyone want to say anything to all that? Because I know some of you are intending to join and I really hope you will. Any comments? And anyone in the existing club? Joe, Adam, do you want to say something?
It's interesting. The readiness is all is a quote from Hamlet.
It is.
About
Yes.
ready for death.
Ready for anything.
Yeah, ready
for
for anything.
anything. Yes, ready for anything, even death. Yeah, thank you. Anyone who's currently in the club like to say anything? Kay or Agnes or anyone like to? Agnes, do unmute.
No, I was saying it's great. Don't hesitate. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Ruth. Yes, thank you. Anyone else want to comment? And my God, I've actually kept to time. That's unusual for me.
Maybe I have a final comment. I do enjoy the sort of off-topic discussions where you go deeper. What is stretching, dynamic stretching, passive stretching, or anything also related to neurophysiology and so on. It draws everything together. So it's really a big asset for me because I'm Alexander teacher, trainer, but my main emphasis is Chinese medicine, Tai Chi, Qigong. and it all draws it together. So I can really recommend, attending the book club.
Thank you. And in practice, Werner, you don't attend, do you? You do it from the recordings. Do you want
Yes,
to say
because
that?
most of my patients I have in the evening, so I'm always treating patients in the evening. In the mornings I'm available, so that's why I'm here online
Yes.
live.
Lovely. Thank you. Good to see you. So as for Werner, if you can't attend in person, every session is recorded. So you can come every session. Some people come every session. Some people come when they can. There are plenty of people following along in the background that actually I never met. And two people came up to me in Dublin and said, I'm such and such. And I went, wow, real person. Good to meet you. And they've been following along. And that also means you can take it at your own pace. Some people follow along at the pace at which the group is going. Other people, particularly people who are, for instance, highly dyslexic, follow along at a much slower pace in their own time because the recordings are yours to keep. Again, anyone like to comment or ask any questions on that?
Yeah, I can really recommend it. I did the book club for 2 years, and I'm thinking about just doing it again because it's really helpful to stay present and get all the information you need. To kind of stay more stable in the present.
Lovely, thank you. And Claudia, you're not a teacher, are you? You're a member of the public. That's good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Anyone else want to comment before we close? Thank you so much for everybody for coming. Sabrina, what time is it where you are? It must be because you're in America. And Robin as well, aren't you? No, I can't remember. So no, you're not. So thank you everybody for coming from Japan, from England, from Germany. Thank you, Mario, from everywhere. And hopefully we'll see you soon. Okay. Bye-bye for now. Bye-bye, Madeline. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Maita. And thank you, Magdalena. Thank you. Okay.